Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into a very specific and frankly provocative audio source. It's titled MSNBC Wants to Control What People Think.mp3. Our mission here is really to navigate through the core claims, the accusations, and just the overall perspective that's embedded in this material. We want to help you, our listener, truly grasp what's being argued and, well, why.
Yeah, this source offers a unique, maybe a particular lens into how one platform sees media operations
Yeah.
and, its perceived role in shaping public thought. As we unpack it, you'll find it's layered. There are accusations of control, censorship, and also a kind of self-definition of the speaker's own media outlet. I think a key insight from this dive will be understanding how this source constructs this adversarial worldview against what it calls mainstream media.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the top then. The source opens with a very direct statement. It's quite striking, actually. It alleges that it's the job of certain media outlets, and they specifically mention MSNBC, to control exactly what people think. The exact phrasing from the source, it's pretty stark. He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
Wow. Yeah, what stands out immediately is how that statement just radically redefines the purpose of media, doesn't it? It shifts from, the traditional ideas of reporting, informing,
Right.
to implying this deliberate active intent to shape public perception, not just reflect reality. This worldview seems really foundational to the claims that come later.
And they double down on that, right?
They do. The speaker explicitly states their belief that mainstream media tries to act like they're not trying to influence you. That's their biggest bias.
Yeah.
So essentially, they're arguing that deception is inherent in mainstream media's claim of neutrality.
Okay, so within that framing that the media's purpose is control, the source then pivots. It goes into specific accusations of censorship, deplatforming, arguing that unprecedented censorship is being launched against outlets like InfoWars and Breitbart. And they give examples. They allege Apple said, Breitbart, you don't get to have an app, and kick those off. And that Google, with ad roll, stated, you can't advertise anymore on the internet through our platforms.
Okay.
And just say, you're fake, you're subhuman. I mean, those are strong claims.
Very strong. And significantly, the source uses this powerful and quite contentious analogy to emphasize how severe they see this censorship, comparing it to historical bans, discrimination.
The quote about?
Yeah, that's like, I guess that's a way to ban gays from stuff, to say gays are now fake news, and I'm not going to bake your cake because you're fake news. Well, it's really because I'm gay. Well, it's fake news, so that's okay. It's drawing a direct parallel there.
Yeah. And they don't stop there. They claim coordination.
Yeah, exactly. It also claims that they're the ones organizing behind the scenes to do it. The New York Times and everybody cheerleading, shut Alex Jones up. So the source isn't just saying these are isolated incidents. It's portraying them as part of a coordinated campaign.
A coordinated campaign. That's a bold claim. And building on the censorship theme, the speaker in our source material, they make counterclaims about fake news. And even go so far as to attribute violence to it.
How so?
They assert that others put out fake news about what we've said that generates hysteria, and then they try to shift blame, stating, then somebody goes in there with a gun and now it's my fault, and then adds, they know exactly what they're doing. Dirtbags. What does that kind of language, that really strong emotive language, tell us about their rhetorical approach?
Well, that phrase, dirtbags, it's been pretty characteristic of the source's confrontational style, isn't it? It seems designed to delegitimize their perceived opponents.
And maybe rally support.
Through these emotional appeals, framing critics as, malicious actors. It really highlights the source's narrative, where mainstream media allegedly fabricates stories, to achieve specific negative outcomes against voices they disagree with.
So turning the tables on the fake news label.
Right. A key insight here is how the source tries to turn that accusation back on its critics, while at the same time implying this high level of credibility for its own statements, suggesting, my name has so much credibility with people.
Interesting. So beyond media control and censorship, the source also dives into race and political discourse. It specifically mentions so-called reverse racism, claiming it's beyond that. It says, it's just racism that we see at the campuses being instilled by the white controllers over the so-called minorities, who are now the new majority in most areas, is mind-blowing.
Okay, that's a complex claim.
Yeah, and the source also notes a discussion about the left's weird takeover of race narratives and this merger with Islam. How does the source seem to be defining reverse racism in this context?
Well, it seems the source frames reverse racism as a phenomenon where perceived discrimination against majority groups is highlighted. It essentially challenges, conventional understandings of systemic racism, suggesting that white individuals are now the targets of oppression by these white
A
controllers.
redefinition, then.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a redefinition that fits within their broader narrative of perceived societal subversion.
What's also fascinating here is the claim that they've just changed all the definitions regarding terms like classic Americana, Renaissance, classical liberalism.
So changing the meaning of words.
That's the assertion. The source posits that both old, fake conservatives and leftists try to control everybody by guilt.
Right.
But asserts that people don't want that. It says all the demographics and numbers show it, no matter what color you are. They're trying to bully everybody right now out of panicked understanding that humanity, the sleeping giant, is awakening.
The sleeping giant is awakening. That's quite the image.
It paints this picture of a broad ideological struggle, definitely. And the source positions itself as aligned with this awakening majority.
And within the struggle, Donald Trump comes up. The source notes that his supporters believe he's doing exactly what he said he's going to do. Simple as that. But then there's also a contrasting voice in the source.
Yeah, suggesting Trump is trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And this voice explicitly reinforces that earlier point we discussed, that this could lead to him controlling exactly what people think, which that speaker claims is our job.
Ah, okay. So there's a fascinating tension there.
Right. Between supporting Trump and also seeing his actions as potentially encroaching on what they define as the media's role.
Exactly. This section really highlights a perceived struggle over whose narrative holds sway, who ultimately controls public thought. On one hand, you've got the view that Trump is just fulfilling promises. That's like a standard political view. But on the other, the concern articulated is that he's actively working to discredit traditional media, potentially giving him unilateral control over messaging. And that is seen by that particular speaker as stepping into the media's self-defined territory, their job of shaping opinion.
So the source itself contains these different perspectives on Trump's role in relation to the media.
It seems so, presenting both a defense of Trump by his supporters and this concern about his potential influence over information from another angle within the material itself.
So if that's the landscape they're describing, this battle, what does the source, specifically InfoWars, claim its own mission is?
Well, the source presents InfoWars as a direct counter-narrative, a counter to these perceived forces of control. It explicitly states, I'm here openly trying to influence an open, free society. Then lists things like Second Amendment, pro-life, but also a very tolerant society and religious freedom and nationalism.
Okay.
And studying how combines and globalists and monopolies have taken over in the past, and I've taken over now to reverse that. And that term globalists is key here.
How are they using it?
In this context, it seems to refer to a perceived shadowy elite or ideology, something that transcends national borders, often implying a coordinated effort to control world affairs and undermine national sovereignty. Understanding that specific usage is pretty crucial to grasping their whole narrative.
Got it.
And the speaker then claims InfoWars has become the most influential media outlet in America, making freedom go viral.
Making freedom go viral. And how do they wrap this up? What's the final message for the listener?
Well, the source declares a very, very positive sign for humanity, described again as the sleeping giant awakening, but with a condition. As long as people fight back, adapt and overcome, and resist this politically and peacefully.
So it's a call to resistance.
Yes, framing their entire effort as part of this larger, almost cosmic awakening. They then position their new offering, InfoWars Prime, as a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalist, offering things like exclusive insider videos, live coverage, and also amazing deals from the InfoWars store.
So content and commerce tied into the mission.
Seems that way. And it culminates with this direct personal call to the listener. If you can hear my voice, you are the resistance. It's not just about information, is it? It feels like recruitment into a perceived struggle.
Yeah. Well, our deep dive into this source material has certainly presented an intense and very particular vision of media, where the very act of informing is seen by some as an attempt to control, and where the fight for information is framed as this epic battle against powerful forces. It's a worldview that clearly defines heroes and villains in the information landscape.
Definitely. And as you, the listener, reflect on this, maybe consider, how do these strong, really adversarial claims about media control, about censorship, and the very definition of truth, how do they shape our understanding of trust and information in today's, well, complex world. And maybe what does it mean when a platform explicitly states its job is to control what people think? Something to think about.